Hello, I'm James,
Hi, I'm Jimmy,
and welcome to A Job Done Well.
the podcast that helps you improve your performance and enjoyment at work.
Good afternoon. What are we talking about today?
Afternoon, James. Today, we are talking about saying no and the power that can give you.
Very good. Sounds fascinating. Tell me more.
Well, most people don't struggle to say no because they're weak. They struggle to say no because they want to be helpful. They don't want to be seen and perceived as being difficult. They're worried about their reputation, their relationships. They're worried about getting on. There's a whole load of things that people worry about when they're thinking about saying no. And the irony is, often by not saying no, they damage all the things that they're holding dear. So saying yes feels like you're doing positive things in the moment, but over time, it can self-sabotage you. So we are going to share some ways that make it easier to say no so you can get more control, focused, and enhance your relationships, not damage them.
All right, then. So go on. Tell me more. What are the reasons? Why do we struggle to say no?
Well, I think there's a few things. I think there's a social wiring where we're conditioned to be agreeable, and yes feels agreeable, no feels disagreeable at a most fundamental level. I think there's also the hierarchical issue that often happens at work. You don't like to say no to your bosses. So anything that comes downwards, you're going to say yes to. And I think that changes how you view saying no emotionally. At times, you get asked for something and you don't really quite understand it. So rather than explore it and understand it, you just say yes and hope that things will work themselves out. And also, I think people worry about the future cost. If I say no, what's going to happen in the future? What does this do to my career, my relationships, my performance, my reputation, all that sort of stuff? So I think all of those factors are things why we struggle to say no at times.
And I guess actually we struggle for different reasons. So some of those really play strongly for me, and others, much less. My personal experience, where have I said yes to something where I really should not say, where I should have said no? Well, the one that springs to mind was a social thing, actually. A friend of mine turned 70. I've got friends who are turning 70, that's triple, isn't it? And he wants to do a sort of on-stage version of This Is Your Life. Now, you've got to be heading towards 70 to understand what This Was Your Life was. But he asked me to be the host for it.
Eamon Holmes, eat your heart.
And he may have, oh my God. Anyway, I have to say, it was the most appalling, dreadful, went on for hours. It's hours of my life. But I said it because I was saying yes to mine. Do you know what I mean? It was because he was a friend of mine. Socially, I will say yes to things. So your point about social wiring, I think, is really important. I should have said no, but I said yes.
And I think we've all done things that, for the sake of a relationship, I guess my experience, like you say, and I think that's a really important point, is some of the things that we raise will resonate and some won't, because it is an individual thing. The reason why I struggle to say no might be different from yours. In fact, you revel in saying no because you like winding people up a lot of the time. But that's a whole different episode, isn't it?
Only people who deserve to be wound up.
In your opinion.
Yeah.
Which is obviously always right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But I guess my experience of saying no is actually, I found back to the hierarchical thing. When I was more junior in my career, I struggled to say no to anything. As I got to be more senior, I was much more confident and able to control my destiny much more. But the one flaw I have in saying yes or no to things is I have a recency bias to things. So if you ask me to do something, like, I don't know, say you ask me to go out and spend some time with some people I don't really like. If you ask me, should I go out tonight? No way, absolutely no chance. You ask me the exact same thing and say, in 3 months' time, I'd like you to come. I'll be, yeah, fine. It's almost like I don't like my future self, so I don't really care because it isn't happening in the short term. So I have regularly found myself agreeing to things. And then as I get close to them, I was like, why on earth did I agree to that?
The hierarchy was an interesting one as well. Yeah. My problem is a little bit, I've probably said this before, is I am a bit of a truth seeker.
Yeah.
which is I will do what I think is right rather than necessarily what somebody tells me. And actually, somebody starts to tell me and starts to push me to do something that I really won't want to do, then my hackles go up and I will say no more strongly. And then we had the conversation, I'm sure I've had a conversation with the podcast once about one guy I work for who started screaming at me across the table, like, when you do this, yes or yes, and started banging the table. We're in a boardroom full of about 10 people. And my answer was, no, sorry, because I can't guarantee it'll work. But, and it was a very stressful situation. But to your point, it sabotaged you. The interesting thing is after that, he never bullied me again because I said no to him. So there is a real power in saying it, but it's very difficult when he's going on.
There is. I've got a couple of other examples just to add in. So on a small level, when we were originally working at Capital one of the senior team who I'd not long joined, I went past her desk to ask her something. And I said to her, have you got a minute to talk about this? And it was one of those, when you say, are you right? How's it going? And you expect the answer to always be yes. She turned around to me and said, no, I can't do that at the moment. Can you come back later? And I was like, oh, and I think I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but actually that really stuck with me. And I went back later and she helped me, no problem. But that tiny thing that had a big impact on me because at the time it felt awkward. And then afterwards I thought, no, that's right, isn't it? Think about your priorities, focus on what your priorities. I'm just taking her off track for what could be some absolute nonsense. And so she rightly pushed back on that. The other one that's perhaps a bit of a bigger one, I was working in an organisation once doing well and my boss was leaving and a few people asked me if I wanted to apply for the job and I'd have a really good chance and would be great at the job and get a promotion. And I was on the verge of saying yes. And then I realised two things. One, I was only saying yes because of ego. And two, I didn't like the work that they had to do and I loved the work that I was doing. So I said, no, I wasn't going to throw my hat in the ring. And actually, that was one of those sliding doors moments in my life.
Yeah.
Actually, it changed the course of the next few years for me.
But that's quite interesting because you do end up saying yes to things because you sort of perceive them as being the right thing to do and that people tell you that they're the right thing to do, but they're not necessarily the right thing for you to do. Yeah, I was quite impressed. My daughter, my youngest daughter, who's a bit of a swat, and her school were pressurising her to apply to Oxford to go to university. And then she said, no, she didn't want to go to Oxford. And I was quite impressed by that because you get a bit starstruck by some of these things and people thinking you can do that. But knowing your own what's important is really, very helpful.
Yeah. It's similar to experience to mine. And again, thinking back, when we were working together at Capital One, I took a promotion to the next level up. And it was a big promotion, but I just got swept away in the glory of it all. And actually the job I ended up doing at that next level up pulled the pants off me. I didn't enjoy it at all. I just got carried away with the promotion. My boss's boss knew that I wasn't enjoying it particularly. And he said to me, he was the one who promoted me. He said to me, oh, you shouldn't have taken that job because you just took it because of the promotion. He said, if you don't own your career and you let your boss own your career, he's doing it on his interests, on his terms. They may not be your terms. You've got yourself promoted and you deserve the promotion, but you got yourself promoted in a job that is never going to give you joy.
So I think there's a very interesting point which is all of this, which is about priorities.
Yeah.
What's important to you?
Our podcast is all about helping people, teams and organisations perform better and enjoy work more.
And I go as far as saying that we believe that everyone and every team has the potential to transform their performance by optimising what they currently do.
So if you'd like to discuss how we can help you transform your performance, then get in touch or maybe check out our website. We also do speaking events, mentoring and advice work as well.
So let's go into some myths about saying no. The key thing is a lot of the time we think it's going to be awkward. You imagine that if you say no to something, it creates tension. People can be judgmental of you and it damages your relationships. And actually, I guess what I found is what happens is it brings a sense of relief to you because you knew you should say no and you would get yourself wound up. Are you going to, can you say no? Can you say it? and the world does not end, and you get a sense of relief. I thought the reaction was going to be much worse, and people respect you more. But even back to your example about the person who was bullying you, when you said no to them, they never troubled you again, did they?
No, they didn't.
And that's what I mean, is it changes. That person had more respect for you and respect for your boundaries.
Yeah.
And to be honest, one of the things that impacts relationships a lot more is people say yes to something and then they faff around with it and then they don't deliver it on time and they don't deliver it on good quality. Actually, that causes bigger issues than just a straight no at the start. And so sometimes it's false economy if you say yes and then you build it on, you get overwhelmed, you don't deliver. I'd rather you told me no in the first place. Reliability beats availability. You can say yes all the time. I don't even remember when we were working in doing some outsourcing with our colleagues in India, and they would always say yes to everything. They were ever so agreeable. Whether they could do it or not, they would always say yes. And actually,
And that's a big problem, right? Because now you mentioned that has happened for me, 2 organizations. And I think that is it's probably a cultural thing, particularly associated with the subcontinent. I was running an outsource operation for a while, and they said, yes, we can do this, yes, we can do this, yes, we can do this. And it was the biggest clusterfuck I have ever had to manage in my entire life. It was a bit like the moment when Kentucky Fried Chicken ran out of chicken. It was up there in that level. Yeah. But it was all because they'd said yes.
yeah.
When really the answer should have been no.
Yeah. And that's the thing is people trust colleagues who deliver really well on smaller number of things than people who take on lots of things and do them all bad. If you remember the team we worked together on once, we built a really good reputation by just delivering what we said we would deliver. You think it was some earth-shattering service we were offering? No, we just did what we said we were going to do. It's quite simple, really, isn't it?
Well, and I'll play that out at a mercenary level. At the moment, I'm considering buying an electric car. And so I'm having an electric point installed at my house.
Yeah.
And we've got 3 electricians coming to quote to it. And 2 of them haven't turned up. And then one of them said, I'm terribly sorry I couldn't turn up. I'll come next week, and still hasn't turned up. Which, you're not going to get the work, are you? It's just, far best there. I'm terribly sorry I can't do it. Another point that's just really worth making is we joke about it, but people do get a reputation of being yes men, and nobody likes a yes man.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've all seen it. We've all worked with them. You don't want to be that person. So, really can have a negative effect on relationships.
No, absolutely. And I think a lot of the thread that goes through these points as to why people are up to say no is in people's heads. So one of the key things to saying no is about how you think differently about saying no. If you think about it, somebody asks you to do something, you're not saying to them, I don't care about you. I don't care about what you're asking me to do. What you're actually saying is, I care about what I've already committed to doing, and I'm committed to doing something really well. And it's just a different way of thinking about it.
So another point I think is really worth making is that if you send yes to something, what you're actually doing is you're saying no to something else. So let me give you a very simple example. I had a boss for a while, and he used to, every Monday afternoon, 5 o'clock, he used to have a ops meeting, and he wanted all his team there. And my daughter, who was about, 4 at the time, I needed to pick her up from nursery at 5:45. And for me to get to nursery at 5:45, I had to leave work at 5:15.
Yeah.
So he had his team meeting 5 o'clock every Monday, and then quarter of an hour into it, I got out and walked out. I was telling myself I was pick up my daughter. And after a while, he said to me, no problem, James, is you're not taking this seriously. Well, I am taking it seriously, but it's just rather more serious that I don't leave my daughter out on the flipping street at the age of 4 years old than being in your meeting. So it really is a question of what is your priority, and be comfortable that for yourself.
Yeah. A couple of other things is thinking about focus. Focus isn't about doing everything well, because that's not possible. It's about protecting the things that really matter to you. And in that example, it's a great one, James. What mattered to you was your daughter rather than a 5 o'clock Monday meeting. What kind of arse puts a meeting on every Friday?
I have worked for some bloke who had an 8:30 meeting every Wednesday. He was a big cock.
I think also back to my point about as my confidence and experience grew and I became a bit more mature, saying no is actually a sign of confidence and judgment and maturity. It's not just about being selfish.
Right, so this is all very well, right? But
Yep.
in the nicest possible way, we're both sitting here and we're not building a career. It's easy for us to say, oh, you just say no. But how
You know, that was,
do
do
you
you remember that
just
as a
say
song?
whammo? Whammo. We had it.
Whammo. Zamo.
No, sorry.
Zamo with a Z.
No, it was- yeah.
You know, Zamo with a Z came to my 11th birthday party.
Did he really?
Yeah.
That's fame. How old was he at the time?
I think he was 11 as well. He was about the same age.
You could have been in Grange Hill, mate. Are you sure you didn't have a big part?
I would have loved being in Grange Hill. Trust me. Oh,
So
Anyhow.
other than Zamo coming to your 11th birthday party, yeah, how would you recommend that we go about saying that? What are some sensible tactics or options
Well,
to do it?
I think you're right, James. It is very easy for us to preach about saying no, but some actual practical things. I think there's the couple of things to think about. One is you can say, look, I can do X, but it means Y will suffer. You know, you're not saying no outright, but you're just saying these are the consequences. And
Yeah.
talk to them about that prioritization, involve them in the prioritization and come to some sort of agreement with them.
Yeah, that's negotiation, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
about being clear what the options are and putting things on the table. So
Yeah.
that's a very strong way of dealing with it.
Another good example is not now. So rather than saying, no, I'm never going to do it, it's like back to my example. No, I can't speak to you now, but come back in an hour. No, I can't do this now, but in a couple of weeks, I will have some capacity to do that. So you're offering an alternative, which helps the relationship.
Why not? Yeah, because it's not flat no. Yeah, it helps. And people see a way through. Yeah.
One of the big things about saying no as well, relates to saying no, is just check that you've understood what it is you're trying to do, which is one of your favourite ones.
This is my
James.
favourite. Yeah. Come on, man. So, yeah.
What are you going to have on your gravestone?
Yeah. So when somebody asks you to do something and they're not being terribly clear about it, you can always ask, what is the problem we are trying to solve here? Get people to be really clear about what it is they want. Invariably, in my experience, they don't actually know what they want. So that's another way of fleshing it out. But that's really important. I think just get really clear on the scope of what it is they want you to do.
And I think that also goes back to when somebody's ambiguous about their request, rather than look foolish and say, I don't really understand what you're asking me to do, people say, yeah, okay, and hope that it comes out in the wash. It doesn't come out in the wash. To your point, being clear about the problem up front really helps.
And those three things, I think, are really, that's just about information flow, right? Getting clear on the scope, getting clear on the trade-offs, and getting clear on the timing all give you options to renegotiate, understand what's going on, but you're just putting information into the conversation. So that really helps.
Yeah. Another good technique to use is a redirect. I would have situations where if somebody comes and asks me to do certain things that I'm not very good at, I would tell them, for example, I'm not the best person to ask to do this. If you want somebody to fix your spreadsheets, talk to James. James is the expert here. Don't just sort of fob them off. Explain why. So if somebody asks me to do something, I would explain to them that that's not in my skill set, but actually I know somebody who's really good at that. So you're helpful.
You're being helpful and you're actually giving them a better option.
Yeah.
Rather giving them a better option. So that's good. And then your final one?
So I think the final one is just be honest about it. I'd love to do a good job for you, but at the moment I'm fully committed. I won't be able to do this. So I think being open about it rather than just, again, a hard no, explain to somebody that, yeah, you're fully committed and you'd like to help them, but you're not in a position right now to do that. I think it's not confrontational and it is quite hard to argue with.
Very good.
The other thing, apart from having the right mindset for saying no, practical tools about saying no, there's a few useful questions that actually I think the listeners could reflect on that would really help them in this space.
So these are questions that they should ask themselves.
Yeah, questions they should ask themselves. So the first one I think is, what am I currently saying yes to that I really resent? Those things that bubble away and just exploring that and understanding why you said yes to it. That will help you learn for next time next time I'm asked to do something with people I don't want to do in 6 months' time, maybe I'll think, a little bit careful about that.
Yeah.
The second one is, who do I need to have a more honest conversation with? So it might be somebody you've said yes to, somebody you keep saying no to and you don't explain it properly, somebody you say yes to that you're just always overcommitting and not delivering, somebody you always say yes to who's ambiguous about their requests and you need to sharpen up. Who's that one person that having a more honest conversation would really help? And the final question, I think, is if you said no to just one thing this month, what would it be?
Or more to the point, I think, what would he protect?
Exactly.
Because, the key thing here is, and it's the most important thing.
Yeah.
I said that again, so it's hanging on my every word, the most important thing. What's your priority? The most important thing is, what is your most important thing? Just what I did that. It's clever.
You're a genius.
I'm sometimes surprised myself.
It is back to your point. When you say yes to something, you're actually saying no to something else. So are you protecting your priorities? So those are 3 questions I think are helpful for the audience to reflect on. So in summary, first we talked about why it's difficult to say no, and we all have different perspectives on that. We find different things awkward.
Yeah.
Then we talked about the benefits of saying no and some of the ways of saying no, both in terms of how you think about it and practically how you do it.
Yeah, I think it's just worth reiterating those ways to say no. So to be clear about the trade-offs, the timing, the scope. Can you redirect it, or is it just an absolute honest boundary?
Yes. Then there's some questions that we shared that are worth reflecting on that will help you learn about your behaviors and how you could behave differently in the future.
And then the final thing was my sage words of wisdom. The most important thing is knowing what is the most important thing. On note, I think we'll stop. Pleasure talking to you, as always.
Thanks, James. Thanks, everyone, for listening.
I'll speak to you later.
Next week.
We cover a whole host of topics on this podcast,
From purpose to corporate jargon.
but always focused on one thing: getting the job done well.
Easier said than done. So if you've got unhappy customers or employees, bosses or regulators breathing down your neck,
If your backlogs are out of control and your costs are spiraling, and that big IT transformation project that you've been promised just keeps failing to deliver,
we can help. If you need to improve your performance, your team's performance, or your organisation's, get in touch at jimmy@ajobdonewell.com.
or James@jobdonewell.com.